Guys, this is Beer Sauce coming at you with another chess video. This time it's a beginner's analysis of one of my favorite, by far my favorite game, really. I mean, every time I play chess, it seems like I get better, and I want to see what what my cap is. I've heard people going from 200 to 2200 over a year or two, and I plan on documenting uh, my chess games on YouTube at least. So let's go with this game. And today I looked up chess strategies and I landed on a video that was talking about, you know, anything king or queen's pawn. I wanted to try out this. So, a beginner, I want you to think about the box in the center. You see the pawn on the corner right there of that box? That is the box that we are fighting for. Excuse the bird. That is the box we're fighting for. The pawn is in the corner of that box. Do you see it? It's a 3 square by 3 square in front of my area. So the main thing to do is to stop this pawn from advancing. And what do? You play positional chess like they did in the 60s. And if they move here, you take them and allow the queen to come out. Now, it's a very risky move for white, but it is also risky for black if they're not prepared for anything queenish. So if the queen was to take here, like what's going to happen? They're threatening the knight, but they're going to be taken. They're threatening to open up the rook, but they're going to be taken. So there's no benefit of the queen taking here. So we can understand, even if it advances and I take here, right? I guess that's the main line, right? I guess I hate saying the word main line. But anyway, what's he threatening now? He's threatening an empty box back here and a pawn, and he's threatening what? Threatening my rook. So if he were to do it, he was gonna go right, my right. Now to defend that, you automatically have to attack the queen's position and defend this square so he doesn't attack it. So if he's here in the center where we're talking about, where that pawn is about to advance and I'm about to take, I want to advance c2 or c7 up to 6. And that threatens that, and that would change the whole game. But we're going on. And he goes, and the game moves forward because he knows he doesn't have an attack. He brings up way too many pieces at once and in a bad position. Something that I can take advantage of by sacrificing a pawn. Now that I'm sacrificing this pawn, it seems like he's winning because, coins, I get to pick up a piece. Beginners always love to pick up pieces and they don't think about the repercussions. I'm learning that myself because, sometimes I don't come to games with a high, elo. I play up and down. I play up to high level chess and down to low level chess. Anyway, so he takes with the pawn. And I decide to do a little bit of a gambit here to open up this side here where my queen and my king is. You see the two diagonals that lead directly to my queen and my bishop, and then eventually to my king for, I'm offering a lot here with this move. But he doesn't take advantage of it at all. He doesn't advance his pieces that he already moved out. Instead, he tries to work on the right side and blocks his knight from advancing. Like he thinks that my knight is going to take that pawn and just sacrifice itself for nothing. So let's see what happens. So the engine says to bring the knight out, but I bring the bishop out and pin the knight. I don't really necessarily pin the knight, but I threaten the damage and make him react to what I'm doing. See, a lot of people think that black should react to white, but I think that white should react to black eventually. You know, white can be up the whole game, and you'll see here in a minute why. White can be up the whole game, and then immediately everything just goes to crap in beginner level chess. So he advances the queen when he already has two pieces out. A checkmateable, it seems like in a beginner level that people could checkmate with a knight and a bishop, but they don't. They really don't. They really depend on that queen. They don't want to sacrifice it in beginner level chess. So that's what I'm thinking about right here. You see the pawn in front of my queen, how it's in that gambit position. It's a decline position, which means that the D file or D rank, I don't know how to describe that. Anyway, the queens are on that same file. So as soon as this square opens up, the queens can sacrifice each other. So let's see what happens. The pawn moves up and defends the knight because the queen is threatening the knight because the knight was hanging. But I'm a turn up. I'm up tempo, and I push my pawn up. And that pawn becomes very important here in a minute because he tries to just make me forget about what's going on there because he's losing and fights another row tries to solve another part of the puzzle that, I've studied the Hopton attack, and that's not necessarily what it is, but Gotham was talking about as soon as this bishop is threatened, I should attack, and that's what I do. So I take the knight, the pawn takes back, obviously, but it opens up this square in front of the king, which weakens him. The pawn moves up. I told you the pawn was going to be very important. Defending the knight, I sacrifice this knight, I leave him hanging, but I advance this pawn to make him take his c3 pawn and take my pawn with it to move him over and keep the blockade between the queens. It makes him feel safe. I know he's going to do it because he wants to keep the queens protected because he knows his queen is not... his queen is obviously protected. I don't understand why he doesn't want to sacrifice because that would leave me down. But he doesn't want to sacrifice, so I'm taking advantage of what this beginner wants me to do because I am, when I started chess 4 days ago, literally 4 days ago, I learned that people do dumb moves like Gotham was talking about, constantly, and it's insane that people don't take advantage of it. So I learned my checkmates a little bit more. I learned my patterns, and I recognize that this D file is extremely important. This D pawn is extremely important. If you lose it, especially in the Indian game, if you lose it early, you're not going to have enough end game or mid game power to win. So D4. And he decides not to take from the C file, but from another blocked up file on the left side, the E file. He takes my knight and allows me to make a decision. Do I want to take that pawn? Because I really want the square B4. But if I send my dark square bishop up there and check the king to get a breather, honestly, that pawn on C3 is going to take me. So what do? I got to take out something on the right-hand side immediately because there's nothing to do other than this. Logic. It's, I didn't really study mid-game, Indian game or anything. I just figure that if I do the openings, I can figure out logic puzzles pretty quickly in 10 minutes. And so I open up the D file. That's what we're doing here right now. And currently, both of our queens are protected. So whoever makes the decision to sacrifice their queen, send their queen down here, supposedly feels like it's going to be at a huge disadvantage. But honestly, if he sends his queen down right now, what's going to happen? My king is the only thing that's protecting my queen right now, because he did a pretty good opening attack. So he decides not to do he decides not to he decides not to do this. He decides to take my pawn, right? So I bring my bishop out here because I know that he's not going to do it now, because now that I'm protecting d8, if I'm protecting d8 now with my bishop, I'm just going to take his queen with my bishop, and now I'm going to be able to castle. See, these are the things that you learn by watching these grandmasters play the true game of chess, and you can take advantage of people's mistakes. And people make mistakes regardless if they know they're making them or not. So here we go. He decides, I'm weak right now. My king is very weak. I'm feeling very threatened. There's a checkmate on the board. There is a checkmate on the board. That's what he thinks. And there is. It's just not now. But I send the knight out, and he decides to not take my gift, my offering, on the weaker, undeveloped side. That's what you have to do if you're on the undeveloped side. And it seems like that was Nimzowicz's whole strategy on black. And, a variation of the Indian game is Nimzowicz's reverse dark square bishop, or dark square knight, excuse me, in the first play. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. It's a 10-minute video. If you want to learn about chess, you can learn a lot about it in the first 2 weeks, and you can beat noobs in 2 weeks and make yourself feel superior and make your other player feel dumb, or whatever makes you feel good. I just like the logic puzzle. It makes me feel good, and I'm not going to let anybody recommend me not play chess. Like, if you're going to be a representative, Hikaru, of the chess universe, tell little kids to play chess, because it's a fun game. Maybe not professional level chess, like you say, but like regular level chess, absolutely play it. It's I'm a 30-year-old man, and I've never really played chess. I played chess a couple times, got checkmated, and quit. But, if I had role models, actively promoting chess as a logic game that keeps your mind active and something that's positive, it can be at least positive. There's a lot of toxicity, it seems like, in this community. But regardless of all that, let's go on. Queen is trying to take my b2 instead of my sacrifice knight, because he thinks that I'm not going to be able to move my queen out to protect it because of the forward advanced pawn that he has. But even in this middle position, these 2 stack pawns are very weak, because if he splits them, I can use them as a tactical advantage somewhere along the line. But here we go. I defend and try to attack the queen. Queen takes the knight, obviously, and checks the king. Queen protects, and he still doesn't want to sacrifice, even though this would be a perfect time for him to do something, but he's still a move behind because he didn't develop his knight or his dark square knight or his light square bishop. So here we go. He moves off and is like, no, I'm scared, and I can't move to the c5 position because my dark square bishop is advanced and protected the king's front. You never want to open up the e-file unless you're, in an endgame position, it seems like. But here we go. I do a crazy move here in a beginner level chess, but if you watch enough YouTube videos, you see that you have to give up pieces if you want a good position. So here we go. This is like a crazy move for a beginner level, because, these are all things that you have to think about if you want to beat beginners. If you're a beginner, if you want to beat them, You have to become somebody that knows how to beat beginners. And who do you listen to? You listen to the grandmasters, the ones that beat them all the damn time. But anyway, I activate his rook. I get his rook out from behind his pawn, and he doesn't have to sacrifice his pawn to do it, or, move his pawn off to another file. And this is a perfect down-tempo move for me to castle. And now that I have castled, I have control of all of these squares. Besides h8, I have control of all of these squares on, F, E, D, C, B, A, if I want it. If it is tactically positional to do it. Now I want to explain to y'all, beginners, watching my video, this rook on the back square is very important. You do not want to move it unless there is checkmate on the board. I'm telling you. Because if you give up your rook on the back rank too easily, they're going to take advantage of it. So I threaten immediately. My queen is right here on the front lines. I'm going to back up my queen because my queen's going to, the more advanced players see what I'm going here for. D8 is a perfect move because it sets up these two pieces on this file. That means I can throw one of these pieces and still control that file. You understand what I'm saying? The D file is mine. Nobody can take it unless they want to sacrifice some pieces. And because they stacked those two pawns, that D pawn got onto the E file, he gave up the queen's file. The queen's pawn gave up his position and didn't back up the queen in the mid game, allows me to take over this file completely. It's mine. If somebody wants to get on this file, they're going to have to pay me rent like Monopoly. Okay? And this is the biggest blunder, because he probably could beat me here with the queen and a rook here because he's controlling the C and B files here. But he is like, ooh, queen, shiny, queen, shiny, queen, shiny. Checkmate. I'm losing here. All these moves that I made were extremely logical, but I am currently losing. By all rights, I'm losing. Because if he moves his rook here down to C8, I'm not going to take my attack off. I'm not, these are my last three pieces, and I have three pawns, and I don't want to go to an endgame. I hate endgames. They're so boring and annoying. It makes me want to go, I don't even know, anyway, I want to do a checkmate because this is the best time to do a checkmate. And he makes the biggest move. He's up the whole time. He took all those sacrifices. I gave all these sacrifices. And I'm like, what do I get for it? I want to see what position do I get for all these sacrifices, making logical moves. Totally logical. What based on what the position is on the board. And he decides to take my pawn instead of offering that rook as a sacrifice to me. In the spirit of good faith, after all the things that white has taken from black. Do you not think that black deserves a castle? Obviously. So, what is that pawn on E5 doing? Blocking the bishop from attacking right. So they can't do anything. Unless he advances that pawn, he's not going to have an attack. And he can't even attack the light square. So he doesn't have an attack on the queen from the left side. So what does he do? He pushes, and he's like, I'm going to take your queen next turn. He doesn't realize there's a mate in one if you do that. Right? He blunders. And that's what, I have had a hard time not resigning, when these people get me in gambits that I don't realize or haven't studied. But this is one that I studied today. He takes the pawn greedily because he's like, no, you're not taking any of my pieces. Checkmate. So this is a call, a video to Hikaru and Gotham. If anybody wants to talk to me about chess, give me tips. I don't have any money. I'm broke, but I would appreciate a message or anything. Until next time, this has been Beer Sauce. Peace.